Good morning, children. So, in the last period, we have started to discuss about the fourth chapter of history, the Mughal Empire. In this chapter, till now, we have discussed about how the Mughal Empire was different than any of the empire which have ruled over the country or ruled over Indian subcontinent before them. About the Red Fort, also we have understood that it was the residence of the Mughal. Then we have tried to understand that who were the Mughals basically. In this we have seen that Mughals are the descendants of the two we can say dynasties which was belonging to the Genghis Khan, and another one was Timur. So in this way there are two lineages from whom the Mughals belong, and the Mughals were not liking to call them as the Mongol or Mughal, because the reason behind it was Genghis Khan's memory was associated with the massacre of innumerable people. Then we have seen that how the all the rulers of the Mughal Empire were celebrating the pictorial genealogy that we have seen in this with the help of this picture. And today we are going to start the Mughal military campaigns. So the Babur, the first Mughal emperor, 1526-1530, succeeded to the throne of Fargana in 1494 when he was only 12 years old. He was forced to leave his ancestral throne due to the invasion of another Mongol group, the Uzbeks. After years of wandering, he seized Kabul in 1504. In 1526, he defeated the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, and Panipat, and captured Delhi and Agra. So, as this, the first Mughal emperor, whose name was Babur, succeeded his throne in the Fargana in 1494, and he at that time he was only of the age of 12 years, about of your age or less than 1 year of your age. He was of that age that time, and but after a certain period of time he was forced to leave his ancestral throne, because in that region the another Mongol groups have entered. Who were they? They were the Uzbeks. And after wandering here and there for many years, then he seized the Kabul in 1504, and in 1526 he defeated the Sultan of Delhi of that time. What was his name? Ibrahim Lodi. And as well as he also captured Panipat, Delhi, and Agra. Then table, here you can see, here is the table number 1. The various important rulers of the Mughal dynasties information is given here. So what is actually explained over here that we are going to see. So table 1 charts some of the major campaigns of the Mughals. The study it carefully and see if you can notice any long-term pattern. You will notice, for example, that the Afghans were an immediate threat to Mughal authority. Note the relationship between the Mughals and Ahoms, the Sikh and Mewar and Marwad. How was Humayun's relationship with the Safavid Iran different from Akbar's? Did the annexation of Golconda and Bijapur in Aurangzeb's reign end hostilities in the Deccan? So here these two pages are given, page number 48 and 49. In this, the information is given about the period of the rule of these rulers, as well as here the information regarding their relationship with the other rulers is also given. Now, Here we are going to see Mughal traditions of succession. So the Mughal did not believe in the rule of prim, uh, primogeniture, where the eldest son inherited his father's estate. Instead, they followed the Mughal and Timurid custom of coparcenary inheritance, or a division of the inheritance amongst all the sons. Follow the highlighted passages in Table 1 and note the evidence for rebellions by Mughal princes. Which do you think is fairer division of inheritance, primogeniture or coparcenary? So here it is said that when how the Mughals were giving their succession to their next generation, or how they were giving the throne to their next generation, there it is explained over here. So the Mughal did not believe in the rule of primogeniture. So what is primogeniture basically? In primogeniture, the eldest son inherited his father's estate. That means the eldest son will become the owner of all the property and all the ruling areas of that whatever the ruler is having at that particular time. And this kind of thing is called primogeniture. And the Mughals were not believing in such kind of primogeniture tradition of succession. So, on what they were believing? Instead of believing on primogeniture, they followed the Mughal and Timurid custom of coparcenary. Now, what is coparcenary basically? The coparcenary is the uh, division of the inheritance amongst all the sons. That means instead of giving everything to the eldest son, the Mughals and Timurs were dividing all their inheritance amongst all the sons. So follow the here the one question is asked to you, that which of the tradition of succession is better or according to you, whether primogeniture, in which only the eldest son was given all the authority, all the estate from the father's side, or the coparcenary, in which all the sons were given the inheritance equally. Now it is up to you, think upon it. Here we are going to see the Mughals' relationship with other rulers. How was the relationship of the Mughals at that time with the other rulers? If you will take a look at the table 1 once again, you will notice that the Mughal rulers campaigned constantly against rulers who refused to accept their authority. But as the Mughals became powerful, many other rulers also joined them voluntarily. The Rajputs are a good example of this. Many of them married their daughters into Mughal families and received high positions, but many resisted as well. So here it is said that if you will look at the table number 1, you will be able to see that the Mughal rulers constantly campaigned in different parts of the subcontinent, and they were moving continuously here and there and gaining the different areas of the subcontinent. So many of the rulers who refused to accept their authority, uh, against all of them, they held the campaign. That means those whoever were not ready to accept their authority, or the Mughal rulers were campaigning towards their region, and they were capturing their region. But as the Mughals became powerful, as the Mughal rulers became powerful, many other rulers also joined them voluntarily. So as the Mughal rulers started to become so powerful, automatically the other rulers also came and they joined them voluntarily as their subordinates. The Rajputs are a good example of this. Many of the Rajput rulers joined with the Mughal rulers voluntarily, and many of the Rajput rulers have married their daughters into Mughal families. and received high positions in the Mughal authority. But at the same time, many Rajput were there who resisted as well. Means they did not accept the authority of Mughal rulers. So here some examples are given that how the different Rajput rulers were given different authorities. So the Sisodia Rajputs of Mewar refused to accept Mughal authority for a long period of time. Once defeated, however, they were honorably treated by the Mughals, given their lands back as assignments to them. The careful balance between defeating but not humiliating their opponents enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. But it was difficult to keep this balance all the time. Look at the table 1 again. Note that Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji when he came to accept Mughal authority. What was the consequence of this insult? So here it is said that the Sisodia Rajputs of Mewar refused to accept Mughal authority for a long period of time. Means they were not ready to accept the Mughal authority for a long period of time. Once defeated, however, they were honorably treated by Mughals. Once they were defeated, and they were means Sisodia Rajputs were defeated by the Mughals, and after that the Mughals honorably treated to the Sisodia Rajputs, and the Mughals returned their lands or Watan back to them as an assignment. Now assignment means what? Means whatever the revenues and all that will be collected by that land by the Sisodias, that revenue will be the part of the revenue will be given to the Mughal dynasty or Mughal authority. The now very important thing to be understood over here is what? The careful balance between defeating but not humiliating their opponents enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. That means what the Mughals were doing basically, they were defeating the other rulers, but they were not humiliating them. What they were doing, they were treating them respectfully. They were not humiliating them, their opponents, and this enabled this thing to respect the other rulers after defeating also enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. That means with the help of this treatment with the other rulers, the Mughal extend their influence, powerful influence over many kings and chieftains. But it was difficult to keep this balance all the time. But many times it was very difficult to keep the balance. What happened? If you will look at the table number 1 again, you will note that Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji when Shivaji went to accept the Mughal authority. What would have the consequences of this insult? That is very important to see. So in this way, here we have done most of the things. In the next period, we are going to see what are the Mansabdars and Jagirdars. Till then, thank you very much.